Kurt David, and I just am excited about being a guest on Keith Andrew Network. I got to tell you, Keith is doing a wonderful thing. He is looking to inspire people and continue to improve people's lives by talking about his own life and what he's overcome, as well as some of his guests and their stories. So make sure you tune in, if you get a chance, to Keith Andrew Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Keith Andrew, and you're watching the Keith Andrew Network. This is episode 741. That's right, episode 741. I'm here with Kurt David. It's our little honor and privilege having you as a guest. Thank you for joining us.
Keith, that's quite an amazing accomplishment in itself, 741 episodes. It takes a lot of work. Having somebody who works in this world, I understand what it takes just to create 50 or 100 of these, let alone 741. So congratulations to you.
No, absolutely. Not to dig up the past or anything, but I originally had to do my show over. So I originally had an extra 300 episodes. So realistically, it would have been in the thousands. But, mistakes happen, and you start, everything's a learning process.
Sure. We all are. We're all a work in process, right?
No, absolutely. Now, the first question I want to ask you is, you are a Emmy Award-Winning executive producer, and what can you tell us about that?
Well, it's pretty exciting, actually. I produce and create television content, whether it be documentaries or short form, weekly half-hour shows. And what's interesting to me is it's a whole different field than what I started off in, right? I started off a very different field. In fact, it kind of goes back to who I am, right? What I like to do, Keith, is before I talk about what I do, is talk about who I am, right? Because that's really what's important in the foundation. And to me, before we talk about what's going on with what I do with the TV world, it's important to understand I grew up, there was 8 of us in my house, right? 2 parents and 6 kids with 1 bathroom. So I learned early on in life that life is not all about you. When you got 8 people in 1 bathroom in a house, you learn quick that life isn't all about you. But moving forward, all 6 of us kids were on athletic scholarship, and 2 of us played professionally, right? So imagine that household, very competitive. And I was one of the fortunate ones that played competitive. But when the pro sports career was over, I started looking at what I was going to do next. And I had a teaching degree. I actually took a year off and decided after I was done playing to just take a year off. And I started on a master's degree in counseling. And I actually became a middle school counselor. And I did that for 28 years. And so that was my first love and first job, so to speak. And as a result, I started looking at other aspects of pro athletes and what they're doing after pro sports. And so I wrote the book, and the book became a regional bestseller where I interviewed 20 former professional athletes about their life after pro sports and how they recreated their success. And so I'm giving you a crib note version of how I got to this point of being an executive producer, right? And so the book did very well. And as a result, we created a TV show on it. And it's been our anchor show from Glory Days, where we interview former professional athletes. We've had 4 successful seasons, won an Emmy Award in season 4 for Best Interview Show. And I continue to create other content. And a big part of it, Keith, is having a great team of people around me. It's not all about me. It's about having very talented people around me and great guests.
No, absolutely. And I can relate to you to certain aspects. I'm the youngest out of 4 brothers and 1 sister. So being the youngest, trying not to use your words, but saying, if it kind of feels like a little competition because everyone wants, that, spotlight.
The attention. Yeah, sure.
But having a big family, especially for the holidays, it's really nice. So yes, having a big family does have its benefits, does have its downsides, because you don't have any privacy and there's always people criticizing you. But you're going to get people criticizing you wherever you go in life. But it's all about how you hold yourself up and overcome that. I give you an example. People talk down to me all the time because I do stupid things. I take responsibility for doing stupid things. Sometimes I do it on purpose. Sometimes it just happens. But that doesn't dictate who I am or who I'm going to be. But it's just part of my character and my personality, you're not going to get along with every single person you know, that you're not going to mix with everyone. So some
Yeah, no,
people will get you, some people will not get you, if that makes any sense.
well, you brought up a great point, Keith, is that really family is the first community that we learn, right? That community, and whether it be through schools of hard knock, through competitiveness like we had in our household, or people not being so kind to you, you learn how to handle it, right? And so that's the first community that you learn is in the family, in the household. And taking that out into the real world, so to speak, is very important. I think we've lost a lot of the idea of community in our society today. Not to get too deep, but I feel like people don't know what a community is anymore, right? This idea of community feel, like where I live at, it's a subdivision, right? It's not a community, it's just a subdivision where people live and sleep and then go somewhere else to work, right? And so it's very different now. But I think you brought up a good point that, whether it's somebody who's struggling or not, we all have challenges, right? You mentioned about doing stupid things or doing dumb things. I think we all have, right? We've all made choices. And last I knew, you were human, right? You're human. Last I knew, you're not an android or alien or anything. And I know for a fact I'm not. And so as a result, as a human being on this planet, we're going to screw up. Not that we purposely intend to or try to. To me, it's more important of how you handle it, right? Okay, you did make a bad choice, or you did something that you really shouldn't have done. How do you handle that, right? How do you recover from that? And I once heard somebody say it takes a lifetime to build character and it takes a moment to lose it. And so it's so important for people to understand that, and that understanding that how important building your character and maintaining your character. And I can tell you firsthand that, I've screwed up. I've made some bad choices. And as a result, I've had to work even harder as a result.
Absolutely. One thing I do want to point out on your end, it's a cool special effect how, it has a red thing shooting over your Superman logo, but the screen is kind of glitching a little bit. I just wanted to
Oh
point
boy.
that out.
Okay.
But with that being said, the next question I want to ask you is, you mentioned, right, you were also a co-founder of your own startup company.
Yeah, Purpose Point. I was a co-founder with Davin Savagno. He and I founded a organization called Purpose Point. You can find us at purposepoint.com. And what we are is we're a professional development company. In other words, we have keynote speakers. If a company or organization needs keynote speaker, we have executive coaches. In other words, coaches and consultants. We have executive training. In other words, there's different programs for trainings for staff and leadership. We also have an Engage platform, which is an interactive engagement for employee engagement, and it's a push system through text messaging both ways. And so I'm co-founder of that, and our goal is to help others as a result, individually and organizationally, especially as it revolves around purpose, helping people, individual and organizations, reconnect with their purpose again. And so it's so important that understanding that all of us have been created for a purpose, right? Each one of us, you've been created for a purpose. I've been created for a purpose. And the idea is to identify what that purpose is. And a lot of time it's based on our gifts and abilities, right? Identifying what our gifts and abilities are, and how we can best serve those and serve others as a result.
No, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Now, the one thing I want to ask you, is that a real set behind you, or is that a green screen?
Well, you want to have a little fun right now, Keith, or what?
Sure.
We can have a little fun because we're in taping this show right now on our set. And within a few minutes, I might have to go to broadcast a ball game. And then if I'm not broadcasting a ball game, I might have to go into my virtual office in Thailand. And if I'm not in my virtual office in Thailand, I might be at my cabin up in northern Michigan, or simply just in front of a black wall, right? And so, it's a virtual set that I created down in my office here, and I'm not sure why it's glitching right now. Is that on my end or your end that it's doing
Your
that?
end.
That's interesting because it's never done that before. So let me see. Sometimes with the lighting, there we go. It's a little bit better. I think the lighting was just hitting it wrong. But yeah, so we can do a ball game right now if you want to do that. We can broadcast a ball game, or simply look at my office here outside the river here. And so this is the fun part about virtual sets, is you can have a lot of fun with them.
No, absolutely. And actually, it's funny you should mention that. The next question I want to ask you is, people talk about virtual events. And what can you tell? Do you know anything about that? Because people are like, well, we can't be there in person, but you can make your own avatar, and your avatar can walk around the screen and everything. Oops, it sounds really nice.
So like
But
for a virtual event, is that what you're talking about,
yes,
is a virtual event? Yeah, I mean, basically, like I've done a few of those this year. I mean, just to back up a little bit, one of the things, I produce and create TV shows as an executive producer. The other thing I do though is I do keynote speaking. And in 2019, I did over 140 keynotes presentations. And this year I've done 5. And one of those was in person. The other 4 were virtual. In other words, kind of like what we're doing right now. And it's so different because like one of the events was for a real estate company. There was probably 300-400 people on the call. And unfortunately, it's not the same interaction, right? It's not the same having 300 faces on a screen versus being in person and interacting with people as a result. But yeah, it's unfortunate that that's, I guess, the way of the world at the moment. And I say at the moment because this is just an interesting moment of time. I mean, we're going to look back at this time a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now and just kind of say, boy, that was a blip in the radar. It was a big blip, but
yeah.
it was a blip in the radar. But yeah, virtual, you're able to do this. And really, I doubt you'd be able to do 741 of these without it being virtual, right? You're not going to have 741 people come into a studio or you go into a studio 741 times. That would be very expensive for one. And for two, the practical side of getting people, to fit their schedule, right? It's easy to fit a schedule for a virtual event because, okay, I just go and do this virtual event and I can get right back into whatever I was doing before.
No, I agree. For an example, if I had my own studio, say you start about 10 in the morning to about 10 at night, say each of them are a half hour. I really suck at math, but hypothetically, you could get 20, maybe 25 people in one
Ooh,
day.
yeah, you don't want to do that to yourself, though. I mean, when we tape a season, we'll tape 4 shows in a day, and that's pretty heavy because you got to be on task, you got to be on your game as a host, as a crew, as a production crew, right? You start getting beyond that. I mean, I know feature films like full-length feature films, they're putting in sometimes 12, 14, 16-hour days. But that's a different animal than taping a interview show or some type of show where you're engaging with people directly, right? You got to always be focused. You got to be alert. I think if you were to do 20, you'd probably never want to do it again, in my opinion. If you did that many in a day, that'd be a lot.
Yeah, my brother gave my sister some Asian coffee, and she said she pretty much turned into like a tuning fork because she was vibrating for, hey, if you give me a Red Bull and I'm full of energy, I can probably just do one after another after another. Of course, you're going to crash, but then why do that to yourself,
Yeah, yep, exactly. So,
But the one thing I do want to do is take a quick muscle break. And when we come back, I'm going to ask you about social media. Can it make you or break you when we come back?
I'm Anastasia Edwards.
Hi, this is Jackie Nunez.
Actress Becky Hayes.
Hi, I'm Amelia Rose.
There, I'm Saki Mieta.
Hi guys, I'm Alexandria Denise, and you're watching Keith Andrews' show. He's doing a terrific job. Make sure you like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more awesomeness.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Keith Andrews Network. It is 741, and here's a good friend of mine, Kurt David. I just want to say thank you for being a guest on the show.
Oh, it's an honor. Thanks, Keith.
Now, the first 2 subjects I want to talk to you about was the remaining time. Then I'm going to pass the show over to you. Is one, have you ever worked with people with disabilities? And are you willing to work with people with disabilities? Apparently, you're working with me, so that says a lot about you. But in your experience, do you think people with disabilities give better, more heartfelt performances than, I'm not saying people with disabilities are better than normal people, but I'm saying, do you feel sometimes that if you have a disability, you are kind of on a pedestal of saying you have to work that much harder to connect with somebody?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Keith, and I'm so glad we're talking about this topic. First of all, I guess one of the most important things is define disability. What does that mean? Because to everybody, it could be different, right? What my definition of disability is different than what your definition could be. It could be somebody in the audience that has a totally different definition. And so to clarify, in your opinion, what do you think the definition of that is? What does it mean to be somebody with a disability, in your opinion?
For me, and I don't mean to laugh on that. For me, I was always labeled on the spectrum of being retarded because I read and learn at a middle school level, 5th grade to middle school level. Like, give me an example. If you had a script, someone say, okay, read this. I can read a little bit, but I do better when somebody says, okay, we're going to go over it 2 or 3 times or as many times till you get used to it. To answer your question about labels, when people think about people with disabilities, you automatically think, oh, deaf people. You think of people who are blind. You think of people who, as most of the things in this country you probably know, this country likes labeling things. Everything has to have a label on it. So with that being said, when you talk about people with disabilities, deaf, blind, or in a wheelchair, or, even though not be politically correct, but the word retarded, you think of someone who stares at a wall all day, for an example. So there's always stereotypes. So yes, I'm on the spectrum, but I'm showing you with the heart and passion, I'm going to break that stereotype. Just because I say, okay, I have a disability does not automatically throw me into the category of 1, 2, or 3.
Right.
I'm going to show you there is a 4th category to that.
Yeah, no, you got it exactly. And that's, I guess, what I was hoping to hear. Every disability is different. In other words, there's physical disabilities. You described some of those. There's emotional disabilities. There's cognitive disabilities. There's all sorts of other aspects, neurological, right? There could be neurological. A great example of that is some of the people that I hire to work on the show are on the spectrum, right? They have an autism spectrum, and they help me out. They do a great research. And what I've discovered, anybody that tends to have, to use that term, disability, whether it be a physical, tend to have better skills in other areas. I had a student, I mentioned in my previous professional life, Keith, that I was a former middle school counselor. And one of my former students lost his vision at 12 years old. He became 100% blind as a result of surgery he had. So he went from being a normal everyday kid to all of a sudden a blind kid at 12 years old. Well, I can tell you that one of the things I noticed through his journey after that was that he actually became so much better at other things without his sight. I mean, his hearing, his intuition was very excellent when he listened to things or heard things. And as a result, I think people, if they have a disability, tend to compensate in other areas and become good in other areas, right? I mentioned about the spectrum, being on an autism spectrum. I found that anybody that has Asperger's or autism tend to be very good at certain skills, far better than even just the everyday Joe, so to speak.
No, absolutely. And for the record, I always like the word autism better than Asperger's, because when you say Asperger's, it really sounds on the appetizing.
And
yeah,
I mean, it's like you said, there's words, they use the retarded word, the cognitive disabilities, the Asperger's or spectrum. I mean, that's the one that I hear a lot now is on the spectrum, right? Somebody's on the spectrum. But regardless, I think what it is there's always a challenge, right? I mean, whether it be a speech impediment or what it might be. I mean, I don't tell this very often, but I host a show, an Emmy Award-winning show, and I had a speech impediment when I was growing up. I used to have speech and language, right, to help with my pronunciation and articulation. And as a result, it helped me greatly, right, to be able to host a show as a result. And so we all have our challenges. We all have our things to bear, and it's overcoming and doing even better as a result.
No, I agree with you 100%. Now, the last thing I'm going to ask you is social media. Can it make you or break you with everything that you accomplish in your life? Do you give thanks to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? Do you think these platforms have made you who you are today? Or do you think if you say, for an example, something stupid, it could easily just destroy everything that you accomplished?
Yeah, no, that's a great insightful question there, Keith. Let me tell you why. I think social media, like any tool, right, throughout mankind, throughout history in mankind, we've created tools, whether it be a wheel, a hammer, whatever it is, it's been created as a tool. Any tool that man has created can also be a deficit, right? I could use a wheel in a bad way and do something bad. I could use a hammer in a bad way and do something bad. I could, social media is a tool for us to use. And to be very frank, it does help with, if you look at the marketing side of something, whether it be a television show or a person, certainly can help to have an influence on others very easily and rapidly as a result. I also know that there's the flip side of the coin as a result. I'm seeing more people addicted to social media, more people that marriages have ended or kids have, just gone off the deep end because they're so deep into this social media, they're losing that relationship, right? University of Michigan did a study probably about 12 years ago now, where they measured the empathy level of generations that came through. In other words, in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. And in the most recent study that they did of this generation, they measured the fact that this generation of people coming out has a 40% less ability to tell other people's empathy. In other words, the empathy is the ability to understand other people's feelings. And this generation is 40% less than what past generations have been. And I directly attribute that to social media, right? The form of communication. In other words, previously the form of communication was face-to-face, maybe on the phone, right? And now it's 100% virtual or very highly virtual for this next generation. I mean, if somebody talks to somebody on the phone, it's an unusual thing. Or, even face-to-face, you can sit around 4 kids at a table and see them all just kind of texting each other or just, Snapchatting each other or whatever it is. And so, it's very concerning. So in that sense, I see social media as a tool that's a detriment. And so there's two sides of the coin. One is a benefit. It can be a great benefit as a result, but it also can be a huge detriment, in my opinion.
No, I agree. To give me an example of how things changed. My dad and my eldest brother, I still have it in the basement. My brother had a art portfolio. When he went to job interviews, you had to have a portfolio with you.
Mm-hmm.
Now you just need like a piece of paper or just send your email. It's amazing how things change, and it changes for the better, but also changes for the worse. So I'll give you an example. When my grandmother passed away, a couple years later, they had developed medicine to stop heart attacks from happening. So if my grandmother hanging in there a little bit longer, she could have gotten the medicine. My aunt passed away from cancer, and a couple months later, they had medicine that came out. Mm-hmm. So with technology, yes, it's great that you can stop, heart attacks. Heart attacks happen. Sometimes you can stop it, sometimes you can't. But it's great that you have medicine that can help compared to 20, 30 years ago. And it's like, well, you're in God's hands now. So it's amazing the benefits that what we can get from it. Now, the downside is you look at people who lose their people skills, lose how to interact with people around them. So that's the downside of people are kind of degrading instead of learning from the past.
Yeah, well, I see it in a lot of the youth. Is that I call it brain mush, right? It's like there's got to be a balance. There's got to be a balance, and I think it's rewiring our brains, unfortunately. So there's a flip side to both coins of this, and so it all boils back to me about purpose, right? Living our purpose, and certainly there's tools to help do that. Like I said, I'm not against social media. I actually took the apps off my phone now, so I'm not easily accessible. As a result. In fact, I don't know if any of your viewers or if you've seen, there's one called Social Dilemma. There's a movie out there, documentary out there. Highly recommended. It tells kind of the inside secrets to social media. It's called The Social Dilemma. I would definitely recommend watching it. It talks about the flip side of that coin. But to me, it all boils back to purpose. Finding your purpose, helping find your purpose, and then finding that balance of how do I continue to accomplish my purpose. Keith, you found a purpose, right? Doing these interviews. This is something I heard you say it earlier, that you wanted to do this the rest of your life, which tells me you got a lot of passion and purpose into this.
No, absolutely. Now I do have a couple of questions for you off the air, but the last two actually, is how can people follow you on social media? Are you on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram?
Yes, and yes. Yeah, we got all of them. I think the only one we don't have is Pinterest. But yeah, probably the easiest thing is to go to my website, kurtdavid.com, KurtDavid, kurtdavid.com, and you'll see different links for all the different social medias. Probably the easiest thing to do, because otherwise I'm giving out different handles for different social media. But yeah, just go to my website, kurtdavid.com. You'll be able to learn more about me, what we do, some of the shows, and also connect to the social media as a result.
No, absolutely. And the last question for you is, I want you to be brutally honest. When I first approached you to be a guest on my talk show, what was your first honest reaction? What made you say yes? And after being a guest, how do you feel now? And would you recommend it to other people?
Yeah, great question, Keith. I think I get asked a lot, and I don't want to say unfortunately, I love doing these kind of things, right? Getting out, talking and meeting people. I do a little vetting process to kind of learn a little bit more about, hey, what's this all about? Because basically I'm getting myself and my brand out there as well. So I always want to be protective of that. And, the more questions I asked of you, the more you clarified about what this is all about and why. And one of the things that I'm inspired by, Keith, is you brought up right away about how, this is about overcoming, and you want to get that message out about overcoming, and whether it be a disability of any type, right? And so that was probably the thing that really attracted me, was saying, yeah, I want to be part of that message as well.
No, absolutely. And let's have like a fun question, just to remain in a minute. As you mentioned, you are a Emmy Award-winning producer. Say hypothetically, we made a bet. Do you guarantee that you could turn this into an Emmy Award-winning show?
I couldn't guarantee anybody that, to be honest. I really couldn't. Could we strive to do that? 100%. Yes, absolutely. My goal is to create excellence, right? My goal is to create excellence, whether it be TV content, my speaking abilities, whatever it is. I want to create excellence. And so I can't sit here and promise anybody, any show, any host of a show that, oh yeah, we're going to win an Emmy with this show. No. Could we strive to that? Do I know the inside secrets of what kind of things are looked for in an Emmy Award? Absolutely. Can I guarantee that somebody's going to get it? Absolutely not.
Well, if you're interested, I would love to work with you. But wrapping up our talk show, it was a real honor and privilege having you as a guest, and I'm looking forward to part 2 down the road.